everyone. Good evening and welcome to the second edition of Pedia Online Poetry Festival, organized by Ideas in Progress in association with Padasala, Cambazine, and Ideas in Progress, titled Polyphony of Global Voices, Readings of Poets in Praxis. Thank you all for being here. My name is Deepak and I'm the presenter of today's session. Pedia Online Poetry Festival, POP Festival, is an attempt to explore the versification practice of English poets of the day. In the 7 sessions in the second edition of the event, we had 7 poets in focus who were listened to, and we had young scholars and faculties joining us who carried the conversation with those in focus. At the outset, let me introduce the 3 organizations that have come together to make this event possible. Ideas in Progress, Padasala, and Cambazine. Ideas in Progress, an organization that had been engaging with the society for over the past 20 years, helps to bring about spontaneity in expression by kindling the aesthetic sensibility within through a creative process. They open up opportunities to engage with artists from various fields, including poets, musicians, painters, sculptors, film and theater enthusiasts, to share, nurture, guide, and motivate creative engagement. It thereby attempts to fill the ideological vacuum by spurring original thought in a critical endeavor. In collaboration, we have Padasala, which is an informal collective of friends at Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, which was formed in 2015 to inspire, engage, and involve the academia with the society, thereby trying to bridge the gap formed due to differences of varying time. Our focus is on academic engagements, and therefore our target is creating bright minds. Yet another collaborator is Cambazine.com, which is an independent bilingual online platform for connecting campus to the community. It helps students and educators by providing the latest news, resources, and reports on university matters, assists learners in forming collaborative alliances, and provides a valuable resource bank for the exchange of information, ideas, and best practices in academia. Now, let me introduce the curator, Mr. Chandramohan. Chandramohan Satyanathan is an Indian English Dalit poet and literary critic based in Trivandrum, Kerala. His accolades include being on the shortlist for the Srinivas Rayaprol Poetry Prize 2016 and a fellowship at the International Writing Program 2018 at the University of Iowa. His book of poems titled Letters to Namdeo Dhassel 2016 was on the shortlist for the Yuva Puraskar of Sahitya Academy. Let me put on record our sincere gratitude to you for having made this possible. Now I extend my welcome to the chair of today's session, Smitha Mohandas. Smitha M is an assistant professor of English at the Government Victoria College, Palakkad. She enjoys writing poetry and film reviews for her Facebook wall. Her academic interests are African literature, Indian writing in English, gender studies, cultural studies, and film studies. I take this opportunity to welcome you to interact with the poet in focus, unfurling her poetic journey, its philosophy, politics, and method to us. Before we begin, a few quick housekeeping guidelines for this webinar. The poet in focus will first read out his poems, and then the chair shall engage in a conversation with him. While they are in conversation, participants can ask questions using the chat feature of Zoom. May we also request you to maintain your video and audio on mute until or unless asked to unmute. On behalf of Ideas in Progress, Padasala, and Cambazine, may I thank you all once again for joining us today. I request all participants online who haven't joined the WhatsApp group to join the WhatsApp group to continue this discussion on poetry further. We look forward to your participation in the future sessions organized by us. Now, it is indeed my pleasure to introduce and welcome the poet in focus of the day, Ravi Shankar. Mr. Ravi Shankar, popularly known as RaSh, is a poet, editor, and translator who has several poems published in many national and international online and print magazines, apart from 3 collections of poetry, Architecture of Flesh, The Bullet Train and Other Loaded Poems, and Kitsugi by Hadni. His poems had been translated into German and French. He has edited and translated a collection of 101 Malayalam poems in the collection Waking in Another, 101 Malayalam poems in the title How to Translate an Earthworm, and has co-translated Sri Lankan Tamil poems in a collection Waking in Another Dream. He has also translated a collection of Malayalam Dalit stories, Don't Want Caste. His collection of translated stories from Tamil, Itchy Tree Monkey, and other stories, Speaking Tiger, and a play, Blind Men Write, are in the pipeline. We are indeed honored to have you with us once again this evening as a Poet in Focus at this last session of season 2 of this Festival of Poems. Thank you for joining us, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So you could begin reading some of your poems and then we'll get to discussions.
Yeah. I'm Ravi Shankar, and my pseudonym is RaSh, popularly known as RaSh. Not only that I write poems in English, I also translate from Malayalam and Tamil to English, and also from English to Malayalam. Started writing poetry only very recently. My first collection came out in 2015, I think. Yeah, 5 years back. Architecture of RaSh. Before that, 5 of Malayali poets writing in English had come together and made an anthology titled Strange Place Other Than Earlobes. And the poets were Gina Mary Chako, myself, Bini B.S., Srilata, and Binu Karnagaran. Binu Karnagaran and Gina Mary Chako are still active writing poetry. I've lost touch with the other two. This was published by Sambark in Kolkata. I will start reading poems from this book, Strange Place Other Than Earlobes. Then I'll go on to the other books. Now, this poem is called Butcher Girl 1. Butcher Girl 1 because I wrote another poem, Butcher Girl 2, a different version of the same poem. Butcher Girl 1. Like a slab of putrefying meat, I lie supine on the cold slab, waiting for the butcher girl, my queen, my gallows, my guillotine, my gory death. To the death, sleep, but I do. A moment of stupor, a wink, and the butcher girl emerges in full splendor. She is on me, above me, atop me, Amazonly. In immortal fear, I hear her laugh like a cracking storm, a volcanic fusillade. See her sab-slurping lips, her chomping teeth, her forked tongue. She, the queen of the netherworld, my butcher, her hair coiled with mating serpents, eyes flashing grasshopper green, nostrils screwed with gleaming metal springs, her nakedness riveted with studs, rings, balls, coils, blades, spokes on her boobs, belly, bum, cunt, and sighing thighs. She grimaces at my long dead face and lets out a shriek of ecstasy and makes love to me, organ by organ, with the quickness of a spider. In her severed limbs, she brandishes the weapons of my undoing: flay knives, bone tongs, clamps, choppers, backsaws, tenderizers, machetes, hammers, sharp cutters, rods, rippers, bone crunchers, grinders, slicers, extractors, setting a frenetic pace of dismantlement, dismemberment, demolition, deconstruction, till on that cold slab of death nothing remains but she and me. She sheaths her weapons, rests her limbs, and secretes a serenading smile and beckons me to be with her, and I do. So this was a poem from A Strange Place Other Than Earlobes, an anthology written with four other poems from Kerala. After that, I wrote a lot of poems, and finally uh, came to Architecture of Flesh, a poem that I wrote in memory of Nirbhaya, who was raped in Delhi. You know the famous case of Nirbhaya. Uh, the title Architecture of Flesh itself came from another poem which I had written long back. I wrote 3 lines only. Those 3 lines were adapted into this poem. In fact, they became the inspiration for this poem, apart from the gruesome incident that happened in Delhi. But I'm not going to read that poem because that poem has been well read at many stages and many places and translated also. But I want to read a very simple poem in memory of Tarkovsky. I hope you know about Tarkovsky, the Russian filmmaker, one of the most celebrated filmmakers. His uh, one of his films was called Solaris. So I was much affected by this uh, film much before I wrote a poem on that. You can see behind me that poster is called The Sacrifice. That uh, that is a film by Andrei Tarkovsky. His last film, in fact. After that, he died. It's a very famous uh, film and its famous poster. So the Solaris is dedicated to Russian filmmaker Tarkovsky. It deals with memories. This film, like it's built like a science fiction, but it is not actually a science fiction. Though the story happens in a spaceship, and the spaceship nears a planet, unknown planet, which has the quality of bringing you back your memories in actual form. So the heroes, the protagonist, his wife is dead, but when they near this planet, his wife comes alive again and again and starts living with him. So it's about memory. So my poem is also about memory. Solaris, to Russian filmmaker Tarkovsky. When I met a memory on the nowhere road, she hitchhiked with me from sand to sea. She told me of a village where memories came to die, and old memories buried the new, or burned them to ashes to strew them in the wind. She was a memory who fell in love with a memory that died without any memory of her. We made love, memory, on the shores of that sea that smelt of lived lives and decaying souls. When the day broke, the sea was parting and she was walking down the sea road. My tears were a memory when the sea was caved in. So this was about, it was a dedication to Andrei Tarkovsky. This is an interesting collection. It has many kinds of poems in it. It's much varied themes and uh, mostly about memories and love and passion. And it's also about academics. There are some poems about play on words. Lots of Tamil is used in these poems. Uh, I was lucky that this book got published in 2005, 2015. Uh, and I'm much grateful to Poetry Wala of Mumbai and its publisher Hemant Divate for giving me this opportunity because I was a totally unknown figure at that time, even now I am unknown. But at that time I was totally unknown and still he gave me this chance of getting a book published. It's not easy to get a book published like this unless you pay for it. Now the next collection, the Bullet Train and other loaded poems, are full of political poems. Only politics is dealt with in this collection. It's not that I write some political poems to be included in a collection, write some love poems to be included in another collection. It's not like that. When they write it, they come intermingled. And these are reactions to certain things which happened in India and the kind of fascist politics that is happening. It was written, it came out just before the elections last year, 2019. 2019. Uh, the, the collection's name takes from a poem, The Bullet Train. This has also been much discussed and translated in other languages, at least South Indian languages. The Bullet Train, I claim that this is the first Aadhaar-linked poem in the world by Aadhaar number 987654321001. So I have given myself a name, a number, Aadhaar number. The poem. The Shinkansen model accelerates to 217 miles an hour, cutting journey time to 3 hours from Ahmedabad to Mumbai. Mukesh sings Meri Gaadi Hai Japani in a soulful studio radio. Born post-war, Shinzo Abe smiles and waves and hugs like Hirohito. This bullet train is the Brahmastra of the epics, or the Narayanastra of the Ramabana, or the Ramabana. Sometimes it is a Mohanastra that drugs billions of people, putting them in a daze. There is another bullet train, a 7.65 caliber Make in India model that passes through stations with strange names like Kalburgi South, Pansare West, and Dabolkar Central. Its destination set in Bangalore, where it rockets through a pulsating heart. The train now will pass through underskin arteries and veins and nerves, tunneling through bone marrow and muscles, till it comes to rest on a magnificent spine bridge, perched like a toy train on a full moon night, till the slightest breeze causes the compartments to topple into your deathless soul one by one. Uh, I don't have to. I think I don't have to say that this is written in memory of Lankesh, Gauri Lankesh, who was shot dead near Bangalore. So this bullet refers to the train and the bullet that killed Gauri Lankesh and many other people like the Kulburgi and all those rationalists who were killed. Finally, Kintsugi by Hadni uh, is a collection that came out this year. Should have come out in March or something, but because of the lockdown in Mumbai, it is printed in Mumbai. Lockdown, it could not come out earlier than November. So it was published last month. Uh, these are love poems, love bordering on the erotic, body, physical love mostly, not spiritual love. Kintsugi is the Japanese art of sticking together pieces of broken porcelain with gold and lacquer. Uh, it's an art by itself, and the, the vases, etc., done by Kintsugi are very beautiful uh, to see. Kintsugi by Hadini. It's about something broken, fixed by a person named Hadini. Hadini is seen as an old tribal woman somewhere in this world who excels in the art of mending things. Kintsugi by Hadini. But I am not reading that poem, Kintsugi by Hadini, uh, because I have read it many times in many fora, and I don't want to do that again. I am reading a poem titled The Girl with the Tonsured Head, Bald Head, Tonsured Head. I wrote it because I saw a girl with a tonsured head and was so attracted towards her scalp. Attractions can come in many ways. Physical attraction, sexual attraction. Anyway, the girl with tonsured head. The girl with tonsured head stops the traffic. Signals go haywire. In her wake, electric poles are uprooted. Servers break down. Satellites go blank. Blossoms adorn the footpath. An inexplicable fragrance blows in the wind. I was alone at the seashore, waiting for the moon to rise, when the girl with tonsured head rose up from the sea. In a moment, her head turned into a red moon, blue moon, and green moon. Two seas rumbled in her eyes, one opaque and one translucent. I passed through her eyes to her brain. The world shimmered and sparked around me. I moved from lobe to lobe, crossed canyons and volcanoes, unknown sounds and unknown colors. In her head, a universe was being formed. Clouds were amalgamating into planets. Two amoebae were mating and merging. Two goddesses with tonsured heads were entwined in furious throes. On a quiet shore, I heard popping sounds. Pink turtles were laying black eggs. So that is girl with the tonsured head. Uh, with this, I come to the end of the poetry reading session now. I think Smitha Mohandas wants to ask me certain questions, and maybe she is prepared for that, or somebody else, whoever. Any kind of question you can ask. Thanks. Thanks for listening
Okay.
to the poems.
Can I start?
Yeah, sure.
So
Deepak,
first of all,
Deepak,
yeah,
Yes,
Deepak,
sir.
pardon.
she
Yes,
can
yes.
start.
Yeah, she shall
Yeah,
proceed.
okay.
First of all, let me extend my um, thankfulness for giving us a wonderful rendition of all the poems that you have done here, and it was quite a nice experience for us to hear your rendering. And before going into asking questions, let me thank the organizers for inviting me here. Uh, and it's my honor and privilege to interview or ask. I mean, it's not an interview, it's just a chit chat with this very great poet, Ravi Shankar, or RaSh. I call him RaSh Ji. Now, let's start with the chronological way itself. I understand that in your younger years, in your youth, uh, you were not writing poetry. You were more into theater, right? And you started poetry when you crossed your 50s. I think, right? So, and what we find in the present day is all these youngsters, even the school-going kids, are coming up with their own books being published. So how do you find this phenomenon, this kind of creative writing starting at a very young age nowadays, and you coming into poetry only after your 50s, right? So how do you find this phenomenon, and what happened in your case? We are very curious to know.
Yeah, uh, you are justified in that curiosity. Anyway, when I was young, this poetry writing was not. It was not an easy thing to do, to write a poem and get published. There were very few magazines, English magazines, which published poems. Poems. I think Debonair was one magazine, though it is known for other things. Debonair was one magazine which published poems, and apart from exclusive poetry magazines, uh, people like me never got an opportunity to approach that kind of literature. And not only that, I was not really interested in a personal kind of literature at that time. I was more into certain collective movements. Uh, you can any kind of movement, what young people do at that time, at that age. So they collectively do many things and make a noise. I also used to make a lot of noise, and I was more into theater. Basically, I'm a theater person. I am an actor, and I used to be a singer. I used to write lyrics in all sections of theater. I used to do a lot of street theater. I was in Delhi at that time, from the age of 22. Uh, in Delhi, we had a Malayalam theater group and a Hindi street theater group. Hindi Malayalam group was called Jana Chetana, and Hindi group was called Street Theater Union. So Theater Union used to do lots of uh, street plays. It was not a street theater like Janvati Manj or Nishan Nati Manj. Uh, they were very political minded street theater groups, but ours was an independent theater group which concentrated on songs and the beauty of the costumes and things like that. Normally, you find in street theater, everyone is wearing the same uniform. So we never believed in that. The theater has to be colorful to attract people, and the songs have to be good to attract viewers. That was our intention. We have done quite a few plays on many themes, like dowry deaths, the practice of sati, and multinational drugs, and even communalism, etc. We have been to communal riots affected areas in Ahmedabad, Baroda, all these places to do plays. Basically, one play, Toba Type Singh, we had done it in street theater form. It was rather famous at that time. We took it to Ahmedabad. So all this entailed one thing. Somebody has to write it. Somebody has to write the lyrics. And you don't find lyrics. The lyrics is just like that. And I could not handle Hindi very well at that time. Even though I'm well versed in Hindi and I can even translate from Hindi, but writing in Hindi is a different thing altogether. So I used to write all the songs for this theater group in English, and somebody, Umesh Bisht, he translated into Hindi, and that's how we used to perform. So I think those songs which I wrote for the theater group were the earliest seeds of poetry in my case. They were not bad songs. They claim like that. They were not bad songs, at least in Hindi translation, they were not so bad. But after I left Delhi street theater thing, I had to leave it, and I had to enter many other things. And finally, I entered poetry when I think let me be candid. It was because of a woman that I entered poetry, because of my relationship with her at a very late age. So she was the one who pulled me into poetry. She is a poet, and she is not from this country. And she started showing me her poems, and I started correcting them. Her English was not very good, so I used to edit all that. And slowly, I thought, let me also start writing poems then, and I started writing poems. And then this Facebook also came in. Facebook did a lot for poetry. It is still doing a lot. Whatever criticisms may be laid against Facebook, I think it has helped in bringing out a lot many creative people into the open. Otherwise, all these voices would have remained silent. Even I would have remained silent, but for this social platform that, like Facebook. I claim myself to be a Facebook poet. Uh, Earlier, it was thought to be something derogatory, but but to me, it is not a derogatory term because I am that, and I stand before you as a Facebook poet. After publishing many poems on my timeline only, I started collecting them, and then they came as poetry books. So this was the background how household waiting life I came to poetry.
Let me tell the audience that in fact I connected to Rashji through Facebook in I think 2016 or so, and I was so much besotted by his poems that I bought his Architecture of Flesh, read it, and I found a kind of breaking away from the normal what do you call the normal path of poetry in his poems, and I was in a way I mean honestly saying I was taken aback a little because of his blatant honesty in it. At the same time, I had to accept that yes, he's telling the truth and nothing else in his poems. That is my personal, the impact that he gave me in a personal level. Uh, Rajdi, do you think that children or youngsters coming into poetry without reading much, as you said, they come too early? What is your take on that? Is it an advantage for them or is it a disadvantage?
It could be both because they are exposed to a lot of poetry now, and they themselves are exposed to other people as poets. It's not a bad thing to happen, and anyway, changes are happening in the world, and this also has to change. The way we used to keep poems to ourselves, hidden somewhere, only known to certain people, certain circles. So that is not good. That was a bad phase. So the social circumstances was like that. Now the youngsters have a lot of chances, and but at the same time, this open the broad opportunities these youngsters have nowadays also spoil their creativity. Uh, Poetry, I don't think it comes from a skill in writing poetry. There's something inside, and poetry is a kind of way of life to me. Poetry is a way of life. And when I say that I came to writing poetry after the age of 50, I don't mean that I was not a poet before that, because my entire life is it has the beauty of a poet. Uh, in whatever we do, poetry comes in. You can be a carpenter, you can be anything. You need not write poetry. The way you deal with the world, that is poetry. And poetry is honesty, first thing. Poetry is the most honest thing which a human being can do to this world. So, uh, youngsters who come in at this age, and they have to mature a lot, and they have to face life so much. Uh, I think they will reach a kind of fruition only then. It's okay. I know, I personally know many poets who are in their 20s, even less than 20. I am friends with many of them. So That's not a bad thing. And many of them write very well, poetry very well. Surprisingly beautiful poems for their age. So that's a good thing. It's a good thing, and if we are careful about the honesty within you, the sympathy you have for the world, then there's no problem. I think if poetry is just an exercise you indulge in for some time, a if it's only a verbal tool for something, then it's not good. That's my opinion.
Okay. So when I read your poetry, I find that like most of it, if you take Architecture of Flesh or if you take Kinsigi by Hadmi, the predominant theme is love and sexual pleasure. Now, my question is, how do you throw away your inhibitions while writing your such poetry? You have to, because we are all as a product of the social, the society where we have these inhibitions, right? So as a poet, how do you throw away these inhibitions, and where do you draw the line between personal and impersonal?
Yeah. Many times it seems that my poems border on very erotic themes, and they go beyond the moral levels of the society,
Yeah.
moral boundaries, which we all maintain. And many poets maintain that moral boundary before writing poems. But I don't maintain that. Yeah, that is true. Because
That
I don't
makes sense.
maintain that, I don't feel like that in my life also. I will be living a kind of standard life, and I will be going about observing certain laws and certain edicts and certain things which I have been taught, and certain things which are part of my discipline. Uh, but still, as a poet, you have to break all that. That is what a poet is. Uh, it's not a living Ravi Shankar or RaSh who lives as a husband, as a father, as a grandfather. It's not that Ravi Shankar who writes the poetry. That Ravi Shankar who writes poetry looks far beyond what is immediate uh, around him. So that's why that kind of thing comes. And writing about eroticism is a kind of breakaway from the sexuality. Uh, you find that a lot of things are happening around you in Kerala and many places in India. There's a people are not liberated enough for that. They have no idea about what is uh, sex or what is love or nothing like that. So there are certain ways in which they have been taught to you think this way and this is what you get married, do all this, and then this happens. And so a poet has to break that. Not a normal man. A husband need not break that. Father need not break that. But a poet has to break that. That is a distinction I make between these two, my life and my poetry.
So I would say you have already broken the set norms, and I would say you're such a brave poet. So my next question is, when you write your poems, do you ever think of the poetic theories and the very academic process of writing poetry, the theories behind it? How do you engage in writing the process of poetry? How do you engage in it? Do you have all these things in your mind? The many theories of poetry. How do you cope up with that?
I am facing an assistant professor of English.
No,
And
we are just Facebook friends as of now.
you may not be
And
a doctor, but you will soon be a doctor too. You will get your PhD.
thank you
So
so
I am not
much.
that kind of person. I see English as something different. Not like that. Not like a professor. I
No,
am.
why I ask, just
You
a
can
minute,
say.
can I interfere? Can I, just a minute, like why I
Yeah.
ask you is there is always a kind of hierarchy between, anywhere in literature, between the, what do you call that, easily understandable writers and not easily understandable writers. If you are getting more tough, you are being valued in a particular pedestal, you're kept in a pedestal. So that is why I asked you. So you told me, I belong to the academic background. So I have heard people say, talk about the hierarchies, those who don't keep up all this kind of theories they don't adhere to these theories while they write. So that is why I asked you this question, whether at all you read these theories at all when you write your poetry, or do you engage in poetic theories?
Yeah, Smitha, please consider me an illiterate when you ask these questions. I'm totally ignorant about most of these things. And my English background, English education is not something to write about. Uh, uh, I'm not even a graduate in English. It
Yeah.
was only a first language for me in +2 or whatever, or at the level of degree. So I'm not trained in literature. Uh, so I have absolutely no idea about many of the theories floating around about poetry. And I don't think that is necessary for a poet. Uh, it may become a burden also for a poet uh, to know about all these theories. Of course, it may help him in creating some poetry in certain poetic forms. Like I am writing a sonnet. Sonnet. I am writing a sonnet. I am writing something else. I am writing a haiku or something like that. So you have to, a certain system is there and you follow that and you create something. I am not, I have no objection to such poets, but I am not such a poet. I write free words and I like free words. I like poems written in free words. Only recently I've started reading many poems. Uh, Many of the poets I know. Literature I have read a lot during my college days, more than many other students. But poetry I have not read much. Shakespeare I have not read. Many other people, Keats or Shelley, or they are only texts to be learned in the classroom. Uh, so I'm not at all influenced by anybody, even Indian writers. So I could write as freely as I could. So that is the thing.
Yeah, continue.
Is it okay?
Yeah, so I was just going to say that is what connects you to all the people, all the common people like us, and we feel it when we read your poetry, and I think that is one speciality of your poetry. Now, let's talk about your first collection of poetry, the architecture of flesh, right? So, what made you write that? What was the circumstances that led to writing Architecture of Flesh?
I told you the poem itself was written because of the Nirbhaya incident.
Yeah.
But this poem doesn't work in a normal way. Like many people write about Nirbhaya, what happened, the gruesomeness of the act, and against the rapists, and that's the usual way such poems are written. But I thought that they were not the only culprits, the rapists. There are many other rapists roaming around in the country, and they are not mentioned at all. So I have given 3 or 4 instances of rape and murder cases, which normally people don't talk about. So I put the Nirbhaya case alongside the other rapes. Like these rapes are uh, done by the army in Manipur. Nobody, if army rapes, nobody is bothered. In Kashmir, Kushampopora, they raped the whole village and nobody is bothered. Very happy we are. But a Nirbhaya case comes and then we take up cudgels against uh, people. Oh, 1 second, I have to connect it, reconnect it. My charge is over.
Yeah.
1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it okay?
Yeah, you can see.
The angle has changed. I have to hold my phone in my hand. It's connected to the charger.
Okay, we can see. Yeah, it's
so
we can see.
Yeah, that's what happened. So all this in upper caste rape, lower caste women, many other rapes happen. So I mentioned 4 or 5 other rapes and connected it to Nirbhaya rape. So that is how this poem was built up. Uh, I think many other people are also facing power failure. Yeah. Deepak also failed now.
I just logged in back.
Okay. So you're okay. I had to turn the angle of my vision because I had to connect it to the charger. And taking out a poem. Yeah, finally, Smitha, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. After saying all this, finally I come to the real thing. So what is rape and what is a woman? What is that body? It's only a body, and it's a body. Everywhere you see that only women are subjected to this kind of thing. Never men. So final description is like this. What is a woman? Woman is an exhibit on a table, a spreadsheet, an autopsy chart, a mortician's design, an architecture of flesh built around a void, a hollow, a frozen core. So this is how that poem ends. After writing it, then I wrote a lot of personal poems. A lot of personal poems are there in the architecture of flesh.
Yeah.
And certain poems written just for fun also, written like academic love and things like that. So it's a good collection of many themes. It had a second edition also within 1 year.
Yeah.
So that is very rare for an for collection in English. Of course, after that, no edition. Nobody buys it nowadays. Yeah.
Whenever I read your poems, I often wonder. Yeah. Would you like to continue, sir? Would you like to continue your comment?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
All right. So whenever I read your poems, I have always wondered, about your ease in understanding a woman's mind very easily. And when you get into the shoes of all kinds of women, battered women, women in love, and how is it that possible? I think not many poets, especially being a man, I mean, there is always this kind of what do you call? Uh, I mean, not able to understand, right? But you very easily you get into the emotions of how a woman feels. How do you do that with such ease and understanding? I would say.
Well, that's because I have known many women. That's the that's it.
Are you a feminist, sir? Are you a feminist?
I started reading about feminism in the 70s, 80s, when I saw this book, Female Eunuch by Germaine Greer. I'm a fan of Germaine Greer. After that, I
Yes,
read her Mad Woman's Underclothes. Uh, so from that, I started. So a lot of feminism has come into me. Though, of course, women can always claim that whatever we do, we are males only. And
exactly.
yeah, we cannot be a 100% feminist at any point of time because that masculine thing will come out in some way. So I'm trying to correct that in my poetry. Uh, that is why all this sympathy for uh, women's struggles come in. Uh, Even in love, I try hard to keep it away from the maleness of love, the male aspect of love. Uh, I don't think this is a good world. This is not a uh, very beautiful world because because men are uh, ruling over this world. That that I'm sure of. That if women had been ruling this world, the world would have been much more beautiful and gentler and different. That I'm sure of. So all my poems point out to that. I treat myself as a sacrificial goat to this thing called woman power. I read that book, poem Butcher Girl. It's all about that only. Even in love, it's like that. Uh, Give a lot of space to the woman, and it's a kind of experiment which we do because a man-woman relationship is not a strictly ordered thing, though for many people it is like that. So in your relationships, you have to experiment a lot and try to be better, try to bring in many things which will solve the problem of patriarchy to the extent possible. So there's a way in which I try to solve that question in my poetry. Of course, many women also are, don't like this kind of poetry because they discard everything that is erotic, and
Exactly.
maybe they are affected by the norms of the society as even as men are. So that is the thing. You can treat it as an experiment in what I do in poetry. Yeah.
I wish more men think like you.
Yeah.
Because we need more men thinking like you, in
Yeah.
spite of the fact that feminism is, or I mean, women empowerment is not just gender biased. Still, you're doing your level best to bring that awakening in the minds of your readers. Now, let me move on to your next book, Bullet Train. Uh, I read that Meena Kandasamy has described that book as explosive. That is the term she has used. Bullet train as explosive. Now, how do you put it? How is it different from your first book, Architecture of Flesh? How is Bullet Train different from your book, and why is it so? Could you just elaborate on that?
This was a collection because architecture just happened. Architecture of Flesh just happened. So there were so many kinds of poems, and I was I was very eager to get it published, like anybody. So when it got published, then I became more confident about my writing and my entering this world of publishing and things like that. So I thought I could now try a poetry book which is specifically about something. So I had written many poems which are anti-fascist and you can say anti-government, basically anti-central government. And all those poems have been collected into this Bullet Train and other poems. I'm dealing with Kashmir, dealing with Manipur, and many other subjects in this about all this Islamophobia which is being built up by the present regime. All those are political poems. So it was a book designed with a purpose. It was purposefully designed. So it doesn't have any love poems.
Okay. So, like, but as far as I know, even in love poems, it edges on political. So, how do you negotiate between this political and personal feelings? How do you negotiate it when it comes to your poetry?
So it depends on what you mean by political. Political means not a political party coming to power or another party coming to power, a fight between them, and it will be like the Democrats and Republicans fighting each other. Most of the fights in India or Kerala are like that. They're all corrupt and they are all vicious people and they are fighting each other. And the only thing is that the new regime is fascist, to say the least, fascist and cruel and oppressive against the Muslims and other minorities. What was the question? I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to know because, as you said, that it's not just based on electoral politics or political parties.
Yeah,
so we say that personal is political, isn't it? Because even if it is your love poems, it's in a sort of political itself.
right,
So I just wanted to know how do you negotiate? Yeah. So how do you negotiate between this personal feelings and the political? When it comes to Bullet Train, it's more of your criticism towards the central government. So how do you balance both? That is your personal feeling outbursts and your poetic, what do you call within? How do you the constrictions? How do you inhabit that feeling? The political and the personal. I think I made sense.
Yeah. Actually, that's what I started speaking about. Then I forgot halfway what I was talking about.
It's okay.
So
it's okay.
Politics is not just party politics. Politics has certain things about that. Politics is about how you build the society, about the well-being of the citizens in any country, anywhere. So, and what kind of society you are going to build for the future generations. The fight is all about that. For example, Marxism talks about dictatorship of the proletariat and a progress through socialism towards a communist state where the state will wither away. That is what they claimed. So, but they did not reach even that socialist state. From there, they had gone back to the capitalist state. So, all political discussions, all political uh, philosophies are about what kind of world we are going to build for our future generations. So, this politics comes from there, not from the local politics on the streets. It has a higher mission, this politics. And in poetry, I think that higher mission has to come into play. Though I can freely admit that the poems in the Bullet Train and Loaded poems are not don't belong to that kind of poetry, that kind of ideal poetry which I should have been writing. They are again of the street. It's a street fight against the central government. And these poems are in the form of that. It's a street fighting poetry, not the poetry that deals with politics with a higher mission. Yeah.
All right. Now, if you take your next book, Kintsugi by Hadni, and that is again another book which I love, and I loved reading, and I remember writing a review of it also. Now, I wanted to ask you this: that how do you differentiate your Bullet Train, that is your book Bullet Train, and your Kintsugi by Hadni, because this is an entirely different subject. It deals with love and love only. So how easily you change your roles, and how is it possible? So what are the two aspects that you want to bring out comparing Bullet Train and Kintsugi by Hadni?
Yeah, there are two books, and two books which came at different periods of different times. So you get a feeling that they are I have dealt with the kind of theme, and now I go on to another theme, and I am making a book of poems on that. But in fact, it didn't happen that way. The love poems and the political poems used to come intermingled in the process of writing. So they are all in the mind, and their periodicity is, you can say, they are written at the same time. It's not that after an interval I have written the other poems. So the poems in Kintsugi are about love, and a love which is built in such a way that it is not spiritual love which we usually talk about. Normally, love is talked about in spiritual terms, like it's a matter of the heart, and again, heart is an organ, not a spiritual one, but anyway, like a matter of the heart, and so many things associated with love. But these poems want to bring down love to the reality, to what is real in love. That is the physical aspect of love. There are physical descriptions and naming the organs and things like that. I don't mind naming any organ. They are all organs in the human body. Why not name them? So, and physical acts, you can describe them without an intent to another purpose. If it is just to titillate the reader, then there's a problem with it, because in titillation comes kind of politics, which is associated with the male gaze. So that male gaze is avoided always in these poems. Though they are written by a male, they are not really male-oriented. In fact, they work against the male. And very rarely they belong to the standard kind of, the normal kind of love poems that you see. Every poem carries that kind of ferocity in it, which is a kind of exorcism that I want to do on the society. They have to exorcise this demon from their physical world. Then only things will become proper. It's a challenge, in fact. It's an experimental book. They're all experimental poems. The one I read about the tonsured head. So I saw a girl with the tonsured head, and suddenly I felt like something about this. It's a different image of a woman. See, that's not a normal woman. A woman with no hair on her head. How do you love such a woman? So normally people want long hair, and that's a kind of poems which we write about. Nobody writes about a bald woman. So that was the idea. It always chooses such things and juxtaposes them with the normative kind of lovemaking. And lovemaking also is it's not the normal lovemaking. There are no descriptions of lovemaking. We talk about lovemaking. So that's it. Anything more?
Having read your Kintsugi by Hadni,
What?
having read your Kintsugi by Hadni, I would vouch that it is not at all titillating. It is very and has profound thoughts in it. That is what I would say, because apparently for some, I mean, they may take it in a wrong. Having read your poems, I can vouch for that. Now, you talked about physicality of love. Now, this is a little more personal question. Don't you believe in something called platonic love? Platonic love? Do you believe in that?
Yeah, of course. Ravi Shankar believes in that. Ravi Shankar has so many platonic loves. We all will have, though the name platonic sounds funny. Unrequited love and loves will never happen, and people go about it. It's nice to see films, read stories about such love. That's a kind of love which people all love. So, of course, Ravi Shankar also loves that kind of love. But the poet is not that. The poet doesn't like that. Okay, follow. Yeah.
Your poems don't sanitize love at all. So
No.
that is why.
Yes.
I mean, now let's talk something about your translations. You are known as a well-known translator, and some of your translations, I have felt that it outshines the original. What you had to say about your translation works? Could you just talk on that?
I think what you said is more or less okay. Only in translations done from Malayalam to English, not from English to Malayalam. English is a language which I am very confident and I am not in talking English. See, I cannot talk English very well. I don't have that proper pronunciation and full diction like that. But I can use English very well. And in translating from Malayalam to English, English is more a direct kind of language. What you want to say, you say it more directly. But in Malayalam, I have found that they beat about the bush a lot. It's a it's a spiral kind of thing, and then only things will come out in Malayalam poems. But when I use English, when I translate them to English, I know very well how it can read in English. I know how it can be more effective if you say in a certain way. So that kind of direct approach comes in the English translation, which people like. And many poets have told me that my translation excels their poetry. Yeah. Many poets have told me, not very senior poets, but middle level like that.
In fact, I must tell you, like, I was having a host of messages coming in after your attendance in the second session, wherein in 5 minutes you were just listening to Valentina, and in 5 minutes you got it translated, and then it was there, and it was like unbelievable. It was like people were like really excited. So I must like remind you that, like say like how exciting you were on that day. I was just reminded of that.
Yeah. I am very quick in doing that. Very quick in translations.
I'm always at awe at the way he translates either certain certain unique features of Malayalam into English, and it's really a tough job. I mean, how to bring the charm of the Malayalam to the English is tough. It's a tough job.
Yeah, something that the participants were wondering was that, in the sense, if you're a translator and if you have the poem in front of you, then you can understand. Okay, fine. But Valentina, and she was not even very fluent with English. She was just reading out her poems, just one reading, and then there was this translation. So it was like really, people were like awestruck.
Sorry. I think your viewers got it wrong. I had the poem before me.
Okay, fine.
I got the poem before that.
Okay.
Just before the session started, I got the poem. So it was during the session that I translated it when you were introducing her. But I had the poem. Without the poem, you cannot translate it.
Okay. That was one surprising part some of them talked about.
I'm not a magician to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rashji, have you ever faced any criticism from Malayali poets for your writing in English predominantly?
No, I am not. Nobody has criticized me for doing that. How can anybody criticize? We choose our language and we do our own things. I am not doing it in their courtyard or something. I am doing it in my courtyard. So what is the problem?
Yeah.
And I am not encroaching upon their space. No, their space is Malayalam. I don't enter that space at all. So there should not be any issue about that.
All right. Now we want to know more about your upcoming ventures. Any new collections?
So we are planning a chapbook, a book of 20 poems, and I call it a chapbook only because it has to be built in a kind of old-fashioned chapbook style. That's why I am not approached any publisher for that. You can give it to a publisher and get it printed, but that printing and paper and the way it is built, created, will not satisfy our purpose. So me and a poet named Ritambara Bhattacharya, she is in Darjeeling, West Bengal. So we associated with each other for this venture. She writes a poem, and then I write a poem. Then she writes another poem, then I write a poem. So like that, 10 plus 10, 20 poems. So the book will be around 25 pages. It is on love. It is on love, which is not getting fructified. Love which will not happen because of the reasons are not detailed there. It's a tale of separation. They are separated and they can never join. So it's about that. We don't know whether those two ever met. And actually, I never met Ritambara. And she's very young, from 27 or 26. And I am so old, 65 now.
Not
So
at all. Seeing your energy, you don't seem old at all.
So
You have so much of energy. You're keeping on writing and publishing, and that is what inspires us.
Yeah. So we two from two ages are doing this book together. I treat it as an experiment. Let's see what happens when the book reaches readers' hands. Mostly the book will be given free or something. It will be printed in a certain way. You can see it. Yeah.
We are all waiting for the book.
And then there's a huge project in Malayalam about women poets. Women poets of Malayalam. We are translating them and bringing out a book. At least from the 50s to the latest poets will be featured in that book. K. Sachidanandan Sachida, famous writer, and ex-secretary of Sahitya Academy. He will be the main person, and I am assisting him along with R.D. Ashok and D. Usha Kumari. Both of them are professors, and I am the only illiterate person doing that job. Okay, so this anthology is going to be something historical. That's what we mean. And some other books are coming out this month. They are done long back, but only now the printed copies will come. This month or February beginning, one collection of stories by Bama will come. It is by Speaking Tiger. Speaking Tiger is a well-known publication. Then one play written by me, Blind Men Write, will come out in March or something. And these projects were badly delayed because of COVID-19. So these are the things. And some other translations too. One Malayalam novel I am translating, Ash Ashita's novel, Magic Mushroom Cats, that I am translating. And Leena Manimegale's poem again into Malayalam, from Tamil to Malayalam.
Yes,
so there are a whole lot of ventures. Yeah. So
excuse me, Smitha ma'am.
Yeah.
May I request you to take a few questions from the chat box, because I have lost my connectivity in between and I've lost the chat. So before we close the session, if you...
Oh, I am not.
Will that be?
I am not able to.
Yeah. So should I read the questions, Deepak?
Yes. So that Ravi sir could answer those questions that have been answered. You can skip. The others you may.
Okay. My God, it is 5:45. Okay.
Yeah, we have got 15 minutes left.
I didn't
So,
think I'll survive for. I didn't think I'll survive for half an hour.
shall I begin with the questions in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, the first question here asked is, what is your view on Dalit literature?
My view on Dalit literature. Obviously, Dalit literature is coming out in a big way nowadays, starting with the Dalit Panthers, and they were in Marathi in the beginning, then Tamil came, and in English they have been coming out. Chandramohan Satyanathan is a prominent Dalit writer. Veena Kandasamy, who is my friend, was a prominent Dalit poet. And Dalit literature comes out in this manner because their voices were not heard before. And whatever literature we were used to was, in fact, literature of the upper caste. And uh, so many, you see, there are many layers of life which we are going through. And if only certain people are writing literature on that, only those layers will be exposed. We have other layers to expose also.
Yeah.
So that is what is the function of Dalit literature. Bama is a Tamil Dalit writer. I remember when her collection of stories was called Kisumbukaran, Tamil, and it was written in language used by the Dalits, which is usually looked down upon by the elites, upper caste. In the beginning, I had a problem with the Tamil. Because I didn't know the meaning. And I asked some Tamils, well, not to me. And they all ran away in disgust. What kind of thing you're translating? Yeah. Sir, what are you doing? And things like that. Because they were not accustomed to that. In their eyes, they were language spoken by the worst people in the world. So that kind of attitude was there. Then I had to go to Bama, go and meet Bama, sit with her, talk to her, and that is how I translated those stories. So this how the literature is looked at by the upper caste. So definitely they have to come up and prove their material, and not only in Tamil or Marathi or anywhere else, but also in English. Because English is anybody's language,
Yeah.
not only of the upper caste. So that is what.
So
Smitha?
the next question is, what is your major source of muse in writing literary pieces? Do you have a muse? That's an interesting question.
Oh, no. I told you I started writing poetry because of a woman whom I met, and is still my friend, and much more than a friend. And we meet once in a while. And initially, all my poems used to be addressed to that woman, and even my collection, Architecture of RaSh, is dedicated to her. Her name is written.
Yeah.
So you can treat her as my muse. So if you want me to have a muse, let her be the muse.
And sir, there was also this query on why did you opt the name RaSh? And that too spelled in a very unique way with R and S capital and A and H small.
Yeah. Actually, when you write Ravi Shankar, R and A and S and Z, it comes in that way only. They're shaped in that way. Now, there are other Ravi Shankars too. There's a famous Ravi Shankar. He's a US-based poet. He's also a translator. And he's much acclaimed in India. So many times we got confused. I got confused. Mm. People got confused with that. Many people asked me about his work as if it was mine. And many people must be asking about my work as if it was his. Then I thought that I have to make a distinction and adopted this RaSh, uh, standing for Ravi Shankar. Now many people know this name. So that's what. Deepak.
Shall I move to the next question, Deepak?
Yes, please do.
So the next question is, please discuss the different insights of your collection, Tamil Itchy Tree Monk and other stories.
It is the itchy tree monkey, monkey.
Here it is monk. It is monkey. All right, it's here written as monk.
The itchy tree monkey and other stories. Itchy trees are a tree in Tamil Nadu. I don't know what is its name in Malayalam. A monkey used to stay in that tree. And it's the story about that monkey in a village. Very interesting story.
Okay. The next query is, what are the dynamics of your poetry? Must a person read widely to become a recognizably good poet?
First thing is one has to be a poet to be a good poet. So that's a first condition. Then you can talk about reading. Of course, reading will help. Reading all kinds of poetry will help. And especially girls should read feminist poetry more so that they are inspired more by that kind of poetry. One need not read any kind of poetry, but yeah, reading helps a lot. It improves the language, how you write it. That can only come from reading a lot. Yeah.
So that question was asked by Fima Azine Odini. I'm not sure whether my pronunciation is right. The next question is from Arsha, and it's not a question actually. It's a remark. Your poems have vivid imagery. Arsha has said your poems have vivid imagery.
Okay, I agree. I agree with that.
Then
you are right. You're right.
Gladys Gayola has asked, how would you invite young readers to write creative poems and publish them? So your message to the young readers and writers.
I think writing poems is a creative process. It's a creative thing. So there's nothing called creative poems and uncreative poems. So you're creative and you write poems, and you follow many methods. There are lots of journals on the web available now. Hundreds of journals are there. People keep submitting them. All of them don't charge you for that. Of course, some magazines charge you a fee for submitting. Hundreds of web journals are there where you can send them, and if they like it, they'll publish. If not, send to the next one. It's an easy process now. Somewhere or other, your poem will get published. I can assure you that.
Next, Hannah Katrina Ferrer has asked, as a poet, when you write poems, do you normally use fiction or non-fiction to make such a piece?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
Was I audible?
No, you are not.
Hanna has asked, as a poet, when you write your poems, do you normally use fiction or non-fiction to make such a piece?
Okay. Uh, it depends on how your inspiration for poems come about. It can come from non-fiction, anything, any piece, anything, any event happening before you, happening in the newspapers. You have a hear about it, you write a poem about it. Uh, and again, you read a fiction, some ideas will come and you can write a poem about it. Like the one I read, the Solaris, it is inspired by a film. So you see, watch a film, and you are inspired by it. You keep that film with you for a long time. Uh, I saw it when I was some 35 or something, and I am writing a poem about it 25 years later. So that much uh, nearness, closeness you should have with the theme. Another thing is you see a newspaper article, like the poems on Rubea. They all come from events which actually happened. So both fiction and non-fiction can be inspirations for writing poems, provided you are creative about it. There's nothing stopping you from doing this. Yeah.
Next, Alina Shahzad has asked a very interesting question. Do you agree that the process of publishing any literary work is difficult in postmodern times because publishers primarily focus on the works of celebrated poets or writers instead of new emerging poets?
Yeah, it's not only about postmodern times. The difficulty always was there. It was much more earlier, I think. Mm. It was very difficult for new people to come up. But now you have social media platforms, many platforms. You have your own platform. You can publish the poems yourself, self-publishing. You can publish it on your blog, and many things are there. Nothing will go waste, whatever you write. And you need not depend on an editor or somebody to come up in literature. Like you don't have to depend on them. You can come up by yourself. Of course, in literary circles and elite circles, elite literature circles, you see a tendency where it's always there. Your friends are there and acquaintances are there as poets. There's a poet group coming up, and they work among themselves and promote themselves. So that will always be there. You cannot discourage that. You cannot oppose that. The trend will always be there. But with your new creative voice, you have to come up. That's a challenge which you have to carry with you. Yeah.
Can I continue with the questions, Deepak? Do we have time?
That depends on Deepak.
Yeah. There are a couple of questions more.
Yeah.
Will it be fine with you?
Yeah.
Pardon?
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. Then we shall continue, man.
So, Asiba Cherry has asked, you are a man and yet you look like a feminist. Why you sympathize to women empowerment? Was I audible?
Yeah, I heard that. The thing is, nobody is 100% man or nobody is 100% woman. And It depends on the hormones within us, the play between estrogen and androgen. So it all depends on that. You are by habituation you become a male or a female. By the society you are made a man or a female or a woman, because certain traits are given to you and you are trained in certain ways to be a man or woman, which you need not stick to. There are so many feminine qualities in a man, and there are so many masculine things in women also. So, as far as my politics is concerned, it's anti-patriarchy, and so I, I would love to bring down the essence of the male in anything. I would like to increase the amount of the feminine principle in anything. So that is why I write poems in which the females have an upper hand and males have a lower hand. That's what something I, as a poet, is doing. It's also my thinking. In actual life, I may be a husband and I may be following all the traits of patriarchy, which is mostly unavoidable. Even in the most liberated among the most liberated couples, you will find this difference always cropping up. But our attempt should be to reduce the male principle and increase the female principles. That's how I build my poems, and that's what I speak through my poems. I think this answers your question.
Next is from Sheila. She has asked, it's an honor to meet one of the greatest poets. My question is, do you base on what you feel when you write a certain poem?
Of course, based on what I feel when I write poems. Of course, any poet will do that. You can't write a stuff without feeling. You feel strongly about something. That's why you write it. You keep it within you for hours and days and months and years. It gets stronger and stronger, that feeling. Then it comes out. So that's a way creative things work. So of course, without feeling, there is no literature or there is no creative thing. There is no creation without feelings.
The next question is from Dr. Swarnamai Purohit. She has asked, for whom does a poet write? Is it for himself or for the society?
See, the poet lives in a society. Poet, like I said, poet is part of the society and he cannot but be separate from it. The kind of society in which he is living. At the same time, he is trying to break away from that society, being a poet. All poets have to break out. There's no question of a poet sticking to the existing situation and being happy with it. That's not a poet. A poet is somebody who is breaking away always. He is freeing himself from things. I think that answers the question. Yeah.
Okay,
Is it okay?
that's a satisfying answer, maybe. I think the questions are over. There is more of gratitude comments there.
Okay.
So over to
There is
you.
one from Yubriko who asks, how long do you construct or write your poem? What is your secrets in writing poetry?
It depends. I write poems very quickly. I don't take much time to write. Because when I start typing, then I just go in a flow and finish it. And of course, I do a lot of editing afterwards. Even after 2 years, when you reproduce the poem somewhere else, one can change the lines and one can change the character of the poem also, what you have written. Add certain characters to it later. Uh, there's no hard and fast rule about things. People say that the poem is very concrete, cannot change it, and nothing like that. You can always change it, and you write in any way which you want. Sometimes I write poems on the phone while traveling in a bus. There are many poems written that way. At a stretch, before it's a 2 hour journey. Before I reach the destination, the poem is written. So that's a good way to travel in a bus. So people can try that. So that's how it is written. You have to get a spark, and you have to sit down after that. When it comes out, it doesn't need what the thought process involving days and months and like that. It doesn't. Once you are on the subject, then it comes out.
Okay, fine. Thank you, sir. So over to you, ma'am. Smitha, ma'am, do you have anything to say to conclude? Anything to ask?
I would say this was such a pleasant surprise for me when you invited me here, and I had such a wonderful experience. I take it as a great opportunity that you gave me. I thank the organizers here. I thank RaSh, my immense gratitude to RaSh for inviting me here. It was a wonderful experience knowing his thoughts on poetry and poetry writing. Thank you so much, Deepak. Thank you, RaSh.
Thank you, Smitha, for coming in at the last moment. And you know the best things happen at the last moment. Okay. If you plan for it, it won't happen. Many things come unplanned, and that is the best thing. Most of them are the best way to do things.
Yeah, I very well remember in our last season, RaSh sir came in likewise. The last moment he joined us, and now he's one of the most celebrated poets that we had over the sessions. And this time it was you, Smitha ma'am, who joined us the last moment. And I must acknowledge your willingness to join this session even at this last moment. It was like a very difficult day for both of us. I was sick, and Chandra Mohan was had to attend this funeral. So we were we were stifling with things. So, and if it were not both of you, it wouldn't have been easy for us to conduct today's session. So, and despite all that, even during the session, I lost my connection in between. So, and I've been intervening in your conversation a couple of times. Sorry for that. So, yeah, I think probably I must thank you, Smitha ma'am, for having joined us today. And special thanks goes to Ravi Ji, RaSh Ji, for having joined us once again to excite us with your poems. So hope to see you again in our upcoming events. Probably a third version. In fact, with this, we are closing today's session. I must put on record my sincere gratitude to both of you on behalf of Padasala, Ideas in Progress, and Camp Design